Sound and speed. G'day. This is a couple of examples of what I like to call movie magic or TV magic. Recently I put up a poll on my community tab where I do put up polls, and I like to listen to the audience's responses. And this had a resounding yes, please tell us more about movie magic, as I call it. I've had 35 years experience in the film industry on and off, and obviously I can't tell you everything about creating and techniques involved because I don't have a 3-year video. But here's a couple of little snippets that come to mind, and there's plenty more that I can tell you about another time. So these are things you probably haven't noticed when you watch movies or TV, and you probably look at them a bit differently if you take this on board. First thing I'd like to mention, and I always notice these things when I watch movies, are the extras in the background, or these days some people call them background artists. Now they're very, very important for a movie, because without them you'd have a pretty boring story. But here's something you probably didn't know. Almost always, and there are exceptions, like some scenes that I did when I was involved in like Flynn, which was an Australian movie by Lionsgate Films, and they made that about 3 or 4 years ago now, 3 years. And yeah, I don't normally do extras anymore, but I did on this occasion. So, with the exception of a couple of scenes where we had like crowd, like rah, almost always with every production you see, the background are miming. Now take notice of that next time you watch a movie, with this little bit of knowledge I've just imparted. They're not actually talking, and the reason for that usually is when it comes to editing the final production, obviously they need to be able to control the levels of sound, and they don't want the background to override the recording of the main actors, also called talent. So, say you see a crowded restaurant and a whole lot of people dining in. Typically this is what we'd do, right, if you're a background extra. They'd be sitting in a booth, say a couple of people, and they'd just be you know what I mean? And if you're quiet enough, you can go any old rubbish, like you'd be like, oh, well, that's right, yes, and then I went along and fell over the stick, and then I picked up the cat and threw the cat. And, yeah, because you're just creating some action in the background, and your voices don't want to override the main actors, what they're saying. You saw a little example of this in that snippet of a clip of the music video I did earlier this year. What went on behind the scenes, where I was just rabbiting on with rubbish, myself and the other lead actors.
They're fighting.
I'm correcting you for not doing that Yiddish thing I told you about.
But I did the Yiddish thing, and you didn't tell me how to do the Yiddish.
No,
I don't
you
know.
didn't.
I don't know, and I don't know what else you want from me, but
Listen,
that is not happening.
Get back to doing the Yiddish, skittish.
No.
That's because in this case there was a music video, so over the entire end product was music. So it didn't matter what we said, we just had to have some movement, and yeah. So take notice of that next time you watch a film. I actually saw one recently, just to slightly deviate, and I laughed because there was a scene, and they were standing by a pool, a group of people, and I could tell that one of them, maybe a less experienced person, walked in front of the other person, which is called blocking your shot. Now, none of us like that. So the woman that was on camera, that the woman walked in front of, she kind of stepped sideways, so yeah, I don't blame her. It's really annoying if someone blocks your shot, and it's very unprofessional too. And here's another little trick too. If you are filming anything, if you can see the camera, it can see you. And that's the same if you're having, say, family portraits, a whole lot of people and somebody had the group together, but you want to make sure you're in the picture. So if you can see the camera, it can see you. There's a little tip that might help you whether or not you're in the film industry. Can I just pause here too to ask, can you take a second and just click the subscribe button? It costs you nothing, but it helps me out, and that's really appreciated. Now on that same topic about background noise, let's say typically a New York street in a film you're watching, crowded New York street, pre-COVID. Obviously, you can't go and record. I'm not going to get into the whole techniques of recording. You can't just go and film, I think of Sex in the City. I used to watch that when I was on. And they're always talking in the street. But you can't just go and record that because you're just going to be overridden by traffic and everything. So usually in those circumstances, you end up doing in post-production what's called, we abbreviate it to ADR, or they used to call it looping, where the talent actually goes into the studio, sometime after it's recorded, and it can take hours or even days for a big film. And I spent all day doing it for a little short film for Stephen King, a little snippet thing we did. And it's quite an art to get used to because you're in a studio or a closed environment. So usually what they do is through the headphones or cans, they play that clip over and over just to get you to get the right pitch. Try and match lip sync the recording. And it can take quite a few tries, believe me, to get it right. But that's generally how they fix it up. There's a term in the industry called "we'll fix it in post." But like anything, it's always better to get it right at the time rather than have to try and fix up mistakes. Now, you're seeing a very dodgy green screen behind me. It's, it really needs ironing. This is my first time to use it. And if you're seeing any special effects behind me, which I doubt because it's full of creases, and the lighting should be even, it's my very first attempt, so I'm just having a go at that. Well, as I knew, the background should be evenly lit, which it wasn't, and also I hadn't got rid of the wrinkles because I just unfolded the sheet. So this is the best I could do in test number 1. Anyway, hopefully in the future I'll get it sorted out. Nope, probably not. Having said that, I've been on many productions where they use a green or blue screen. It depends what you're filming in. And I'm sure you've all seen the making of episode or whatever, the making of Star Wars, the making of anything, you name it. You'll see behind the scenes, and very often things in the studio, they use a green screen where they can put in a picture or a background. A lot of big films are shot mostly in studios. I know on the Gold Coast here we have Warner Brothers. Very big movies are made there. They even have giant ocean tanks, wet stage. And I can think of a number of movies where they've done that. So it can look like you're out in the ocean, but it's in a studio. A bit different to the old days when Jaws came out, and I'm old enough to remember when that came out. They actually shot that on location. I think it was one of the last times they ever tried that because they had an awful time filming it actually on boats. And I won't get into it. There's a whole... You can look that up. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff on the internet about it. So these days it's mostly done in studio. And on that fact, most things you see on TV, let's just skip sideways, are pre-recorded. That show I put a snippet up of recently, for where I was one of the 100.
Steve, I believe. Steve from Bellbarry, is that how I say it? Steve, where are you from?
Close enough, yeah. It's the west side of Brisbane.
Okay, brilliant.
That actually took all day to film. There was 2 episodes all day. We filmed that from home and then, of course, had to make it look like we were answering the questions, etc.
Danny DeVito.
I reckon. Let's have a look. Yeah! I reckon that's a great lookalike. Steve, thank you very much. I think you are a regular Danny DeVito. Well done. Let's move on to our next one.
Even the nightly TV news these days is filmed half an hour to an hour before it's broadcast. So it's not live either. That's not to say that everything isn't live, but almost always most things are pre-recorded. It's not really a lie. I guess it kind of is, but it's entertainment. And the main reason for that too is if you make a mistake, well then they can just cut it out. So a lot of the live crosses they do aren't really live at all, they're pre-recorded. They have the technology to do it, and they used to do it that way. Like TV stations have what they call OB units, or outside broadcast vans, that can transmit up to the studio and they do a live link. It still happens occasionally, but there's really not that much call for it anymore. So that's something to be aware of as well. And it makes sense, like if you've watched a live stream, that's one reason I get nervous doing live streams on my channel, is because you can't cut it out. Whereas if I make a mistake here now, and I've already made a couple because I've got muddled up, I can just cut that out in editing if I want, and then you see a mistake-free video, more or less. So it does make sense. The technology is there, so that's why they do it. Now, if you're at all familiar with my channel, you'll know that typically in what I call Studio A, which is out there on the deck, you get a lot of background noise of birds, which most people like, but it can get annoying. So on this occasion I've moved everything inside, set up this screen here, and I'm actually recording in the lounge room. Having said that, I've had to wait for hours for people around the neighbourhood to stop weed eating and using excavators and brush cutting. So that's frustrating. Whereas a proper studio, it's soundproof. Yeah. There were several other things I meant to mention in this video, including subtle little things, especially for TV, for current affairs shows, etc., that you wouldn't notice. But leave a comment in the comments section whether or not you'd like to see an additional episode of this, and I'll reveal some of those secrets that you may not have known. If you want to know about acting or my experience, you can check out the chat I had with my friend Grace, who's an actress of many years. But like I say, this video is not about acting or filmmaking per se, just a couple of little clips of things that you may not have realised that now you do. So please comment below if that was a bit of an eye-opener. I can make more information about this another time if it's of interest, but yeah. Okay, well, I hope that's been entertaining to you, and yeah, I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.